So I guess if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and get this rolling. I'm sure that some people will start filtering in. If not, this will be recorded and will be viewable on the city's mobility plan website. If you need any information on how to access that recording, you can contact me, Laura Dodds, City Senior Transportation Planner, directly at ldodd@cityofpsl.com, and I would be glad to answer any questions you may have or direct you to any materials you may need. So the purpose for this meeting is to discuss the upcoming changes to the mobility fee schedule and similarly the mobility fee ordinance. With us, we have Jonathan Paul and Lauren Rushing with New Urban Concepts, and they have been the consultant associated with the mobility plan to date. I'm going to go ahead and let them kick off the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, we will briefly open it up for any questions. To keep them concise, I would appreciate very short questions. And also you can follow up with me directly if you have any individual or specific questions. Thank you. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jonathan.
All right. Thank you very much, Laura. Let's see. Lauren, am I driving this or are you?
I'm driving it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. My name is Jonathan Paul. I'm principal of New Urban Concepts. I'm with Lauren Rushing, who's been working with me on the phase 2 mobility plan and mobility fee. Next slide, please. So essentially the phase 2 mobility plan, something that's been in the works for almost a year now. We have made a presentation to City Council. We've met numerous times with staff. We've had 2 community workshops to gain a lot of feedback on the proposed roadway plans. So just a quick summary from the phase 1 mobility plan to the phase 2, there are fewer 4-lane roads as part of the overall plan. There's an increase in the number of roadways where we're proposing to add a center turn lane, similar to what's being done on Floresta Boulevard, south of the Crosstown Expressway today. During that time, I'm sure as most of you are well aware, inflation's going up across the board, and that has not spared Port St. Lucie with projections of overall cost upwards anywhere from 30 to 50% where we were just a year ago. The mobility plan projects that we've identified between the 2 phases are far more refined at this point. We've also looked to add several transit circulators to be provided over the next 20 years, consideration of a water taxi along St. Lucie River, and the potential for more boardwalks as well within the community to address drainage and environmental issues. Next slide. So this is the actual updated corridor map for the phase 2 mobility plan. The roadways that you see in orange are roadways where we're proposing to either add road capacity, whether in the form of a new street or an expanded street, whether it's a 2-lane divided roadway or the widening of a roadway from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. In the green, you'll see where we're proposing a multimodal improvement only. That'd be a sidewalk, a bicycle lane, a greenway, a multi-use pathway, or even a dedicated lane for golf carts and for electric scooters and bikes. The roads that you see in black are the county roadways. Previously in the phase 1 mobility plan, the plan included improvements to Range Line Road, Glades Cutoff, Midway, Prima Vista, and Walton. With the interlocal agreement between the city and the county, all of those roadway projects have been removed from the mobility plan and the mobility fee update. Next slide, Lauren. This is a little bit just further refinement of those corridor maps where we actually show where the new roadways are, where the roadways are proposing to add a center turn lane. Those are shown in magenta. The new roads, which are primarily west of 95, are shown in orange. The blue corridors show roads that we're proposing to be 4 lanes. This includes Port St. Lucie Boulevard from Darwin down to Becker, California from St. Lucie West down to Del Rio Boulevard, and South Bend Boulevard from Bayshore, Oak Ridge / Floresta, all the way down to Becker Road. And then I believe also Community Drive, which would largely be a developer-driven project out to the west. So principally within the core portions of Port St. Lucie, east of 95, there are proposals to 4-lane California, 4-lane a portion of Port St. Lucie, 4-lane a portion of South Bend. And there is one proposed improvement to 6-lane St. Lucie West from 95 over to Kashmir, which would essentially merge into the existing 6-lane portion of St. Lucie West. And I'm sure, as any of you are well aware, if you've driven through the interchange, Florida Department of Transportation is making major improvements right now to the Interstate 95 and St. Lucie West Boulevard interchange. Next slide, please. So as an update to the phase 1 mobility plan, we have included a number of intersections. Several of these were identified initially, and we've further refined those as we've gone through the overall plan process. And these intersections are defined as either adding road capacity, making just multimodal improvements, increasing high visibility crosswalks, and those are largely proposed along some of the future greenways. There are also multimodal overpasses and underpasses over 95 and the Turnpike, and there are several roundabouts proposed throughout the community. And then underlaying that are the greenways, the trails, and also the proposed road improvements. Next slide. As part of the overall mobility plan, there has been a significant portion of the phase 2 dedicated to further defining the multimodal improvements, whether these be sidewalks, bike lanes, dedicated golf cart lane, multi-use path, or a greenway. And to give some priority and some semblance of what the overall network in the future would look like, we developed essentially what's known as a principal multimodal corridor map. Think of this as a principal arterial roadway like Gatlin or St. Lucie West. These are the primary corridors to carry multimodal transportation. In addition, the secondary would be the major multimodal corridors. And these are largely, think of like a collector roadway. These would be your secondary system that supports your overall network. But this sort of helps provide, without getting into all the detail of each specific corridor or segment of roadway, a guiding map to what corridors are the most important in terms of destinations and connecting existing residents with businesses, with shopping, places of worship, and schools as part of an overall system. Next slide. And this is actually the more detailed segment by segment breakdown of that principal corridors map. And you see we're proposing a lot of different improvements. The phase 2 mobility plan will have a detailed list of all these projects. Will indicate whether it's on one side of the roadway, on both sides of the roadway, and what type of facility it's going to be and what type of facility is proposed. Now we'll say that part of this plan update and part of the fee, The underlying corridor maps, we are going to update as part of the mobility fee. And then we're going to be continuing to have community discussions and discussions with the city council over October, November, and December this year to further refine each one of these projects. So there will be additional time for community input and feedback on the specific types of multimodal improvements being proposed, in addition to roadway and transit as well. Next slide. As part of this, the city has undertaken a number of different plans over the years, the transit authority as well. And we've sort of combined these with several of the multimodal improvements being proposed and looking at future transit circulators over the next 20 plus years. Some of these would be higher priority, such as those, collecting St. Lucie West with local schools and the college, and in other areas connecting the downtown and the Port District. And we've also proposed including a potential for a water taxi route along the St. Lucie River and a portion of the C-24 canal. These routes are definitely subject to change over time. And really these are for initial discussion purposes and planning purposes only. And should the council move forward with several of these, the priority corridors would be established over the next 5 to 10 years. Next slide, please. And so with that, those are the actual updates of the mobility plan itself. And as I had mentioned before, overall, we've updated the major corridors in terms of what roads are or are not going to be widened, which ones are going to have multimodal improvements. Those will form the basis of the updated mobility fee. And then the further refinement and final adoption of the phase 2 mobility plan will occur over the next 3 months. So switching gears to the mobility fee itself. Previously, we had 2 assessment areas, east of the river and west of the St. Lucie River. And this was largely done as part of the city integrating county projects into its overall plan. With the interlocal agreement between the city and the county, removing all county projects, we've made several changes to the assessment areas because now a portion of the county's road impact fee is being assessed within the city. Previously, that was not the case. Now it is the case. And so with doing that, with removing some of the county roadways, and the county's fee itself did not recognize any difference east or west of the interstate or east or west of the river. So with that said, with the mobility plan and the changes to the county road projects, we're removing all developer funded or obligated improvements from the mobility fee calculations to ensure that we're not double dipping and charging twice for the same impact. And we've also revised or proposing to revise the assessment areas to east of 95, the southwest area, largely in Traditions, and in the northwest portion of the community. And the difference between the southwest and the northwest districts largely stem from the number of developers that actually have existing credits within the greater Traditions area versus those future developments north of Glades that may or may not have credit agreements with the city today. Next slide, please. And so these are the 3 proposed assessment areas. The east, again, is all areas within the city, east of 95. We've done our best to follow existing city limits. The fee itself would only be assessed within Port St. Lucie. And then over the next 20 plus years, there's a possibility that some of those areas may annex into the city. And without having to update these maps every single time a development annexes into the city, we prepared this overall map that shows what the existing assessment area is, and then if an area annexes into the city, which assessment area it would fall under. So you have an east, a southwest, and then a northwest expansion area. Again, these aren't saying that everybody's going to annex in this area. Somebody or nobody may annex at all. But if they do, to ensure that the fees can be assessed and that they're adequately being addressed, we have proposed these expansion areas to accommodate annexations. And then in the future, 5 years from now, when this is updated again, any areas that are annexed into the city would just become part of the overall assessment area. Next slide. As part of this, we've also updated the benefit districts. Now, the assessment areas determine where the fee is actually assessed on developers coming in. The benefit district actually shows where the money's spent. And so previously we had 5 districts: the Northwest, Glades, Southwest, Tradition, and then all the area east of 95. Under this proposal, the Northwest, Glades, and Southwest largely stay the same. We changed Tradition District to the Village Parkway to more accurately reflect its location. And then we're also proposing to split the east area into north and south to more accurately allocate funding between those 2 areas. So the next slide, please. So this would actually be the updated benefit districts map. Previously, you would have seen the Northeast and Southeast as one unified area. Now they are actually proposed to be 2, roughly along the Crosstown Parkway, and then just north of the Village Drive, or consistent with city limits, just north of Walton Road. This really ensures, especially from a multimodal standpoint, that funds collected in either area are principally spent in that area. The ordinance itself will have provisions for how the city could spend different money within various districts, but it'll also have a requirement that any use of money outside the district actually has to be documented. You have to actually provide a finding that it provides a benefit, has to be signed off on by the city attorney, and also signed off on by the city manager. So it really just, it's a way of providing additional transparency. Benefit districts were a big issue with the county. The county has made several changes to address city issues. And we also feel that, this change is appropriate, given the size of the area and the needs in those different portions of the city. Next slide. And so with all that, the end of the day, it results in a fee. This fee reflects a reduction or a removal of county roadways. It also reflects a reduction or removal of developer roadways, and also reflects the increase in cost of several of those projects, as well as roughly a month after this was last updated last year, the IT trip generation manual was updated as well. So several of the changes that you see in terms of uses are due to actual changes in the underlying trip generation. But in terms of the county's percentage of roadways on the overall network, it was roughly 12%. So on average, you would expect anywhere from, depending on the actual specific use, 10 to 13% reduction from removal of county roadways. And so if you say the area in green, it's east of 95, and that's the mobility fee that would be in effect for east of 95. There are 2 new areas, southwest of 95 and northwest of 95. And then there's a caveat added to the top of the schedule. And this is for developers without city road impact fee credit agreements. So we have several large projects primarily within the Southwest District that have existing agreements with the city for road impact fee credits. They also have obligations to build infrastructure in that area. So part of the reason why you see a lower fee in the Southwest District is that we have removed developer roadways from the underlying calculations. And we've essentially given development in that area a 22% recognition of internal capture. So with pulling out the county roadways, with recognizing a reduction of internal traffic, that actually results in a lower fee. Now, if a developer does not have a credit with the city, this is what the developer would pay to the city as part of its fee. Now, the percentage reductions that you see in yellow, those are only provided for the east of the district, just for reference purposes. And you'll see as you go through this list and then the next table, quite a few of them are in that 10 to 13% range. There are a few others that are either higher or lower. Those occur because there was actually a significant change in the underlying trip generation of that use between last year and this year. Then the last category, the Northwest, we have also provided a reduction based on internal capture of trips. We've also provided a reduction based on share of travel going north into St. Lucie, unincorporated county. But we've also recognized that area, because it is further away from other portions of the city, does have a longer trip length. So as you go through the schedule, you'll see most of the uses are actually lower than the east. Every now and then you'll see one that's a little bit higher. And this is largely due to changes in the underlying trip length of those specific uses. But in general, the area east of the interstate pays the highest fee. The Southwest area, which has the more significant mixture of uses today, has a greater number of internal roadways being built by developers and internal capture, would pay the lowest of the fees. And then the Northwest for residential would pay lower. For several other uses, it may pay a little bit higher, but that reflects both internal capture of trips, some share of trips going to the north outside of the study area, and then also slightly longer trip lengths compared to the east and the Southwest. And so as you go through that, you'll just see varying percentages of reductions. And some uses have undergone a pretty significant change in the underlying trip generation itself as well. Next slide, please. And so to show that, the relationship of the current fee, now that the county's roadway impact fee is also being assessed within the city, we've done an analysis of what it would be based on the city's mobility fee, the road impact fee charged by the county, what the county charges in unincorporated county, and then what the complete charge would be within the city of Port St. Lucie. And really just to kind of provide a comparison between what a development would expect to pay outside in unincorporated county and what the development would pay within Port St. Lucie. And as you notice, at the end of the day, most of the fees are pretty close. There are some, within a plus or minus 5% either way. There's one or two, the marina, I don't really know that, the county didn't specify on its schedule for marinas. I'm sure if it had a marina, it would do a special assessment and determine that fee. Likewise, they don't charge on their table for outdoor recreation, but I'm sure if a use comes in, they do that. But in general, you'll see that the vast majority of the fees are comparable between what is charged in unincorporated county and what is assessed within the city of Port St. Lucie. And there will be a whole detailed technical report, again, that we're working on now, that before we go to first reading will be available to the community for review, along with a detailed ordinance spelling out all these changes. And these tables will all be included as part of that documentation as well. Next slide, Lauren. And so just sort of summarizing, the mobility plan and fee does remove county roadways. It also removes any roadway that's an obligation of the developer from the mobility fee calculation. And this ensures that the city is not charging twice for the same impact. It is based on the update of the phase 2 mobility plan. It is also based on the latest cost estimates that we have available to the city. It does include updates to funding, and the previous fee did have roughly $40 million in credit available for the road impact fees that had already been paid to the county. But as part of the interlocal agreement, the county has agreed to spend those on Midway Road and on Glades, and then per the interlocal agreement between the city and county. So we had to remove part of that funding as part of this plan. Next slide, please. So a further update, the new assessment areas, they do vary in terms of trip length, trip factors, internal capture, external travel by area. And so this next go around will be pretty detailed in terms of we did a lot of modeling as part of the discussions with the county and the mediation between the city and the county. And that's factored its way into these updated calculations. One of the big changes is, as part of the agreement, the city is going to honor any prior roadway impact fee credit agreement between a developer and the city. So if a developer has an agreement with the city that specifies a certain amount of road impact fee credit, they are going to, well, we're going to honor that. Two, they're also going to use the old road impact fee schedule to determine what's owed when they come in for building permits. So they won't be drawing down on their road impact fee credit based on the mobility fee. They'll be drawing down on it based upon the old roadway impact fee. This is something similar that I've done in Sarasota County and Palm Beach Gardens, and quite successfully, that essentially honored existing agreements. Part of this is done because a few years back, I believe in 2019, the Florida legislature made an amendment to Florida statute that essentially vested a development to impact fees or whatever impact fees that were paid at the time. They didn't call it vesting, but they called it basically anytime a developer has a credit and a local government increases its fee, the value of that credit increases as well. So instead of just working through those semantics and inflating the roughly $20 million of fees that are out there today to $60 million in fees, is better just to hold on to the old agreement, work through those credits, and then if and when they are exhausted, then those developers would then pay whatever the mobility fee is at that time, or the mobility fee that, the schedule that we showed on you. One thing we're going to do, because there's been a lot of back and forth over the last year plus on who has what credit, there will be a provision in the ordinance that basically is going to require each of the developers and the city to enter into, for lack of a better word, a true-up agreement, where all sides agree to what is the credit that's issued, what's remaining that hasn't already been used, and then what's the schedule that's going to draw it down on moving forward. So as of October 1st, or as of when we enter into these agreements with the developers, everybody will be on the same page in terms of what credits are available and how they're utilized. And so there's a good chance that a significant portion of development in the Southwest Traditions area may not pay a mobility fee for some time as they work through their credit agreements. But really, this is given statutes, given the changes with the county and the interlocal agreement, and given the parameters we have to work under, this seems to be the most forward and fair for all parties and straightforward process to get into. And the draft developer agreement that we'll have out there will provide additional detail on this. So if a developer has an existing road impact fee credit with the city, then the city is going to honor that agreement. Next slide, please. And this just sort of continues that. We have excluded any developer obligated roadways from the mobility fee calculation. You'll still see them shown on the mobility plan because they are future improvements, but they are not included in the mobility fee calculation to ensure we're not charging twice for the same improvement. Developers that are building infrastructure have been given an internal capture reduction. And then as developers move forward, depending on if they do or don't have a credit, if they don't have any credit, they'll pay a city mobility fee and they'll pay a county road impact fee proportional to the impact of their project. Next slide. And so what we are working on, in addition to this presentation, is finalizing a draft ordinance, finalizing the technical report. So technical report will update the corridor maps and intersection maps from the first mobility plan and serve as the bases. This will go before the city council pending September 12th for a first reading, September 26th for a second reading, and October 1st for an implementation deadline. And then the further detail of the mobility plan itself will be something that will be workshopped with the city council over the next few months. Ideally, be adopted and finalized by December. If not, it will be January, February, the first part of next year. But the intent is to wrap up this entire plan process fees, by the end of this year. Next slide, please. All right, and with that, that concludes my presentation. And then Lauren and Avi, I'll be happy to answer any questions that come up and then refer back to any of the specific slides on the presentation itself. I know that's a lot to digest, and we are working on the technical report. It will be just as detailed as the last go around. The ordinance will also be out there. And then once that's out there, we will be available for feedback and answering questions and addressing those comments before we get to the first reading. And so Laura, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else before we started opening it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent presentation, Jonathan. I know a couple of people trickled in after the fact. I'd like to reiterate that the purpose for this meeting is to allow you as the stakeholders to have a short dialogue with us one-on-one, answer some very brief questions about the proposed fee schedule and ordinance. Jonathan already provided the anticipated schedule, but just as a reminder, it is per the interlocal that is anticipated to be adopted by the October 1st requirement. So lastly, before we open it up to any questions, I would like to reiterate that you can contact me directly at the email that's provided in the chat, or you can find the information that's been provided in this presentation on our mobility plan website. If you as a stakeholder or a developer that you represent would like to have a one-on-one meeting, you can contact me directly and we can further discuss your scenario. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'll open it back up to those questions and let Jonathan conclude.
All right, thank you, Laura. I'm just going to drop the link for the mobility plan website in the chat as well, so everyone can access more information there. I don't see any questions in the chat at this time, so I do just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions or you need any clarification on what Jonathan discussed today, now would be your chance. And like Laura mentioned, if you come up with questions later, you can always email her, and we'd be happy to follow up with you as well.
Yeah, and just like our last go around, we've attempted to be very open and transparent through this whole process. Laura and I, and then, the legal counsel for the city, we've met with a number of developers. So, it's really our intent to make sure that you're comfortable with this process, you understand it. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to do anything we're not supposed to. We're just trying to implement the interlocal, trying to be consistent, trying to be fair to everybody. And, one thing we've learned, everybody has some level of uniqueness within this community. And we recognize that. And what may be applicable to one developer is not necessarily another. But we do try to answer all your questions. We try to be fair through this process, open with it and transparent. And we'll continue to do so. All the information will be out there. And we will definitely be happy to meet with you to address any questions you have between now and the adoption. It's our hope that, everybody's comfortable for this process. And that, it's been a while, given everything that's happened over the last year between the mediation between the city and the county, and we have an interlocal now that's sort of guiding us on what we need to do. And again, we're just trying to be as open and transparent as possible.
And we did get one question here. Where can we download the detailed reports and information? And I believe Laura is typing an answer now, but I'll just mention out loud that you can visit that website in the link in the chat. And the phase 1 mobility plan and all the information from that phase is already up on the website. The technical report for phase 2 is still being finalized now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, and Laura, that should be available sometime after October 1st. And then
the updated technical report probably, within the next few days, actually. Okay. Along with the ordinance. So, we just want to have it out there and plenty of time for people to review before it. The phase 2 mobility plan would be detailed after October 1st. And that includes all the cross sections, the pretty pictures, and a lot of the graphics. But the technical report itself for the mobility fee, at latest will be next Monday. But we're working hard on it to get it out to you as soon as possible. And there's a lot of pieces we have to document because of all the changes that have gone on between the county. But the core itself, the methodology that we've used, it's very consistent with what we did last time. Largely taking out the county roadways and also removing developer roadways from those projects. So, we keep an eye on it, and I'm sure Laura will send out a blast once we have everything posted up there, but we are working as quickly as possible to get that documentation to you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren and Jonathan. I couldn't have said it better myself. All right. Well, Jonathan, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we sign off here? I believe that we had some pretty limited questions. You had a lot of really in-depth criteria. I think what a lot of folks are really waiting for is the rest of the reports to come online so that they can digest those, because understandably, those are very technical documents.
It absolutely is, and it became even more so with with the interlocal, the agreement between the city, the county, also making sure that we're not paying very close attention to make sure we're not double dipping and we're not charging anybody twice for the same impact. And I also say, if you have a credit agreement with the city, or you think you have a credit with the city, probably should reach out to us, because we do want to have that true up mechanism. This is one thing relayed to us by various, council members, and even just in terms of the building department, we all want to be on the same page in terms of what the amounts are. We all want to be, fair, transparent about that. And then going forward, how we track it and how it's drawn down on. So everybody just has a lot more certainty going forward over the next year than we've had over this past year, given the city and county.
Excellent point, Jonathan. I appreciate you bringing that up, and that is one of the greatest facets about this, is not only do we have your expertise and professionalism, but this is a very complex process with technical data, and your analysis is greatly appreciated. So that being said, if there's no other questions, I would like to reiterate that this is being recorded and that you can contact me directly if you would like to have some questions or go over some things in you or your developer's specific scenario. So with that being said, I would like to say thank you to everyone who attended live, and I hope everyone has an excellent evening.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.